More than bricks and mortar, wood and nails, they're works of inspiration and art. In a world ruled by physics and mathematics, individual character appears, reflections of the designer. The buildings stand as a visual legacy of the architect and give clues to who we were as a people. Structures, old and new, exist together in uneasy alliance. They form and transform the landscape into communities, into the places we call home. Tonight we explore the world of architecture. Hi, I'm Bill Landry. Welcome to Heartland Tonight. Most of the time we're content with the function of a building as a place to hang our hat or hang out our shingle. We don't pay much attention to the rules of design that make for a strong, sound structure. But now and then something catches our eye, something we might not have seen before, and we see it in a different light. Tonight we venture into the world of architecture, from a pioneer of the prefabricated home to the home of a pioneer family, an architect in art, and the art of nature. We take an ending as our beginning tonight. Once these simple structures dotted the landscape, their design is unmistakable and proven over time. They are not showy, just practical, necessary. Relics. Cast aside. Objects from the past, their usefulness outlived. They scatter the countryside. One is the object of countless jokes, obsolete in the modern world. It is a monument to practicality, a structure of necessity and convenience belied by humor. In the world of modern technology, like an ever-present sentinel it stands, the lowly outhouse. It's not funny. It is universal, utilitarian in design, basic in function.
I think an outhouse is a good example of how a piece of architecture can express or reflect its intended use.
Private. Well ventilated. Examples of solid construction.
Dig a pit, then build a floor over it with a stool, either wood or concrete. Then put the four sides and the door.
As primitive as they may now seem, they represent a leap forward in sanitation.
Everyone just used the pine thickets, or one person told me that their family had a deal where the men went to the woods and the ladies went to the barn.
This practice continued in isolated areas until population increases made the woods seem smaller and smaller. Fearing the spread of disease, county health departments stepped in with plans for building outhouses, no closer than 50 feet from a water supply and 10 feet from a house or boundary line. The classic model is a one-holer, but there are options.
The fellow that had a two-holer, he was supposed to be uptown.
Sized to fit different anatomies, shaped and sanded to reduce painful splinters, decorated to taste. Although not as portable as their modern-day descendants, as one pit filled, the structure itself was moved over a new pit.
Some calculations have been made in the past as to how much waste a human being generates in a year.
The size of the pit reflects the size of the family. Of course, with a large family, a waiting line is inevitable.
Hurry up in there, will you? Come on, you're not the only guy around here. Well, look at its name, outhouse.
You didn't build it right against your house. You'd put it back 100 feet or so away from the house, because they do smell in the summertime.
A layer of lime helped keep the odors down, but you don't linger here.
In our society, it seems that a trip to the bathroom has become somewhat of recreation even. It's a trip. There are books to be read and leisure time to be spent.
A youngster could find a trip to the privy daunting.
I'd go out in the snow of a night. Of course, my dad would go with me, but it was cold. Not a pleasant experience.
One thing that I didn't like about using an outhouse was going from light to dark and not knowing what was in the dark.
Pays to look around before you sit down and see if there's a snake in there.
This weather-beaten target of pranksters and the butt of jokes remains dependable even as it disappears.
They're as practical as they've ever been.
Heartland Tonight returns with Knoxville's mail-order architect, a pioneer of the prefabricated house. Its rough-hewn beauty graces the East Tennessee landscape, in blunt and severe counties especially. It is an East Tennessee invention, the cantilever barn.
They're ours. They were invented here as far as we can tell. Nowhere else in the world do people build barns like this.
He designed houses with a custom look at a price affordable to the masses. He was a trendsetter, a pioneer in the mail-order home business. In the late 1800s, American homes sported all kinds of fancy trimmings. Abundant resources, cheap labor, and mass production, brought about by the Industrial Revolution, made exuberant styles like this affordable. Enter architect George F. Barber. Barber came to Knoxville in 1888, a time of great momentum, when success here was driven by the notion that if you could dream it, you could do it. The railroad linked Knoxville's riches of locally produced mantles, marble, and brick to important cities. There seemed to be no end to the virgin timber being cut from the mountains. George Barber had a plan for it all. Barber published catalogs illustrated with his designs and advertised he would customize a plan to meet the client's wishes. Ironically, his genius for marketing was born because his work was unaccepted at first by Knoxville society. His mail-order business boomed.
Customizing the house exactly the way they wanted. And before, only rich people could have architects do that for them. And here was something that anybody in the middle class could afford to do.
Design number 36. The staircase is intended to be beautiful in plan and design. Cost to build $3,180. Design number 2. Cost to build, $1,810. Barber's designs were whimsical and eccentric, impressive and affordable to the rising middle class. This remarkably from a self-trained architect. Before long, every state had a Barber home. Soon, companies like Sears and Roebuck began selling mail-order homes. Knoxville manufacturers that Barber recommended in his catalogs basked in his success. Ultimately, Barber brought all of these forces to bear in one idea. He pioneered the prefabricated home. One of his most elaborate was shipped in 14 boxcars to Jacksonville, Oregon. In 1892, Barber unfolded his grand plan, a suburb of his homes along the new streetcar line in East Knoxville.
This is Washington Avenue of Park City. This was an area developed by George Barber and J.C. White and the Edgewood Land Improvement Association. It was a subdivision. The streetcar ran right down here. This house here was George Barber's first house in Knoxville. It used to have a fancy turret on the back corner and a slate roof.
Some homes in the once prestigious neighborhood barely hang on. Changing tastes and urban flight left other Barber homes to the wrecking ball. Barber himself changed in his later years to design more classically influenced homes. Ironically, it is in other states that Barber homes command popularity enough for a fan club. His homes are valued as historic treasures and museums. But you just have to look around to see that folks are finally embracing the work of George Barber, Knoxville's mail-order architect. A appreciation for Barber's homes deepens over time. Now it's a point of pride to live in a Barber home. Next on Heartland Tonight, a grand house of the frontier and an adventure in art and architecture. The Thomas Amey home outside of Rogersville withstood the rigors of the frontier. That it still stands today is a testament to its strength of construction and the builder's attention to detail. It is an historian's dream. The Thomas Amey home near Rogersville is a time capsule and a family treasure, one that archaeologist Dr. Charles Faulkner says will help us to better understand life on the frontier.
It has been changed very little since it was built in the early 1780s.
The 18-inch stone walls were a defense against Indian attack.
Yes, quarried right on the place. This is the hall, which would have been the informal living area for the family. This is where they would have cooked, and the dining room. You can see the size of the fireplace here, in which they would have done their cooking.
Bed in here?
Yes, the adults probably would have slept here. And over here is a very interesting old door.
Built in 1783 before the town of Rogersville, Thomas Amey's home was a fortress on the frontier. This door was made double thick, also for protection. The hand-wrought hinges and nails were made right on the place.
This is an interesting hinge over here. It's called an HL hinge, which is very typical for the 18th century.
Box staircase?
Yes, this is a box staircase which leads to the half-story above.
Box staircases were common in the 18th century and were built to save space.
How many people lived in these old houses?
Well, he had 16 children, so he needed plenty of sleeping area up here.
The Amey house was built on the Great Indian Warpath, which later became the old stage road, so weary travelers were frequent guests here.
And like so many of these houses, they weren't inns or hotels. They weren't anything like that. But if you were traveling and it got night and you were close to a house like this where the people were friendly and took in guests, then you would just simply stop and stay there. Let's see what's up here in the attic. Look at this, where these rafters have been lap joined together and then pegged. You can see where they marked them with Roman numerals so that they would match when they brought them up here. This is probably the parlor.
Thomas Amey was a French Huguenot, and Dr. Faulkner believes his house, with its stone walls and central fireplace, may reflect a Norman French tradition.
This house is probably somewhat more elegant than you would normally see on the frontier. Here's the cellar, Bill.
Thomas Amey's 1,000-acre homestead once boasted a brickworks, sawmill, gristmill, blacksmith shop, and even a tavern.
According to this history, it was like a little village unto itself. They produced everything they needed. This is a storage cellar.
When they have that big fireplace down here?
Well, this is not a fireplace, Bill. This apparently was for meat storage. You can see the hooks that they stored the meat on.
The Amey house is unique because so much of the original structure is intact. Why that is may be the most extraordinary story of all. For 8 generations, the Amey house has been kept in the same family.
The same family lived here. There was a tradition. There was a very strong family tradition of keeping the place, maintaining it, preserving it, because this was the family home.
Today, Martha Amey lives in the family home, a guardian of history, for her family's sake and for ours. From the frontier, we turn to a man who always sought new frontiers. Malcolm Rice shaped his life like he shaped his buildings. His was a life filled with art and adventure.
I know that I've always been adventuresome. Usually a challenge to do something nobody else has done.
Malcolm Rice welcomes a challenge. A good piece of wood will do, a little like himself. Solid, workable, with plenty of potential.
This is Isaiah here, and that is done out of walnut.
Wood sculpture is a recent accomplishment. In his life of 96 years, there was a stint as a lumberjack in Maine. He lived in China in the 20s, honeymooned aboard Jack London's boat, the Snark, traveled cross-country with his new bride on a Harley. Sounds like fiction, but is in fact all true. The nation is rewarded still with his architecture work in the marble halls of Washington.
So that was my job, to come to some conclusion as to whether it was feasible to build a National Gallery in marble, all Tennessee marble. 320,000 cubic feet. That was the largest marble job ever done in the world.
The marble was graded by color from the base to the heights of the building, a subtle but monumental stone tapestry.
They had to be interwoven so that you weren't conscious of any distinct lines.
The National Archives, the Jefferson Memorial, and other federal buildings were among his projects before making Tennessee his permanent home. As the University of Tennessee's first architect, challenges were still there, but different, such as the time the university was offered a gift statue.
It's valued today at somewhere around well over $1 million. There were only 3 of them ever cast. And the trustees weren't too sure that they would accept it, because what would they do with it? You know, it was an outdoor piece. And they feared that a nude figure might be painted or something done to it by students.
Rice envisioned the vine showcased in UT's McClung Museum, still in design.
They thought they put it in a museum, they put it way in the back room someplace and shut the door. And my idea was, I put it on a column. Couldn't be better displayed. I think if the trustees had known what was in the back of my mind, they'd have fired me. The rough parts are the challenge of your life. And if you don't have any challenges, you're pretty dead fish.
His is an imagination always at work. After a reluctant retirement from UT, that energy rekindled a love for wood sculpture.
I just wanted to accomplish something, that's all. I get sort of ideas. I won't say they're visions, but they're concepts. And then I make a little sketch of them.
Today, Malcolm Rice is cataloging his sculptures and writing. Texture comes when an adventurous life yields to the chisel of experience. The outcome, a fine piece of work indeed. Malcolm Rice took natural materials and formed them into his personal vision. Next, we see the art that nature wrought. It's a wonderland, a work in progress. Sculpted by wind and water, the South Cumberland holds a continually changing display of nature's handiwork. Given all time, the Cumberland Plateau is a virtual geological chameleon. It is a world fashioned by nature and always changing. The Carter State Natural Area near Swanee, Tennessee stands as proof.
This is the edge of the Lost Cove, edge of the plateau here overlooking Lost Cove.
That's where we're going?
Mm-hmm.
Solid as a rock is not a notion to cling to here on the Cumberland Plateau. Distinctive, hard sandstone caps the mountains, but underneath, softer rock has yielded particle by particle over time, giving way to spectacular formations and gorges busy with life. With the help of ranger naturalist Randy Hedgepad, we can see the industry of this place.
It's wild mountain mint here, which has a pretty strong fragrance. A little bit of it. But you can crush it up like this and rub it around your face and stuff, and it's a good natural insect repellent.
You don't want to use poison ivy to do that.
Yeah, you got to make sure of your plants.
A standing dead tree harbors a lizard, a skink, and who knows what else.
They don't mind sharing the same tree?
They have different food habits.
Some of what's found here defies explanation, like the Cumberland rosinweed that grows nowhere else in the world. And we're still wondering about this fluke of nature.
Come on, guy. Katydids are fairly obnoxious creatures. They're rude and repulsive and aggressive.
Have you ever seen a pink one?
Oh, it's biting me. I'm going to have to get rid of it.
Get him. He's eating your eyeball.
Off with you.
Off with your head.
So much for the pink katydid.
As we walk down the 150-foot bluff, we can see how the rock is still changing.
Look up, you can see some real loose ones just hanging there.
How loose?
Very loose.
The stream that created the natural bridge we saw earlier emerges here.
Feels good.
59 degrees or so. Oh, this is breakdown.
Breakdown.
Cave is continually breaking apart and falling down.
What's keeping this entire roof up in
Not
here?
much. It'll eventually fall on down, too.
Most of us notice little but the grand changes. And as nature is a modest genius, you must seek out its work to fully appreciate it. Nature, cities and towns, even people, we're all works in progress. See you next week on Heartland Tonight.